He was told once again that he was just a useless husband. What no one in that Mayfair drawing room knew, not his wife, not the man she was sleeping with, not a single soul smirking into their champagne, was that he owned the very company they all depended on. His name was Alexander Harrington, 41, unhurried, watchful, easy to underestimate. Beneath the surface, he was one of the wealthiest property tycoons in Britain, the quiet architect behind Ashcombe Holdings, a real estate empire so private that most of the industry believed its founder was a myth. 5 years earlier, Alexander had made a decision to vanish inside an ordinary life, to be seen as nothing more than a man with no job, no ambition, and no money of his own. It wasn't weakness. It was a test of his marriage, of the people who claimed to love him, of who would still respect him when he appeared to have nothing left to offer. His wife, Eleanor Harrington, ran Harrington & Vale, a boutique property development firm carving out towers across the London skyline. What Eleanor never knew was that her firm had come within weeks of collapse twice in its early years, and both times, an anonymous trust connected to Ashcombe Holdings had quietly wired the capital that saved it. That trust belonged to Alexander. Her career, her name on every glossy brochure, had been built on a foundation her own husband had poured in secret. And while he kept her company alive, Eleanor had fallen for someone else. Sebastian Kensington, a wealthy property developer and one of Harrington & Vale's most valuable partners. Charismatic, moneyed in his own right, always the most confident man in the room. The affair wasn't hidden so much as tolerated, because Eleanor was the name on the door and Alexander was, in everyone's eyes, a man not worth defending. The first humiliation came at the firm's Christmas gathering at a private club off St. James's. Alexander had come at Eleanor's insistence, for appearances, she'd said. Sebastian, midway through a toast to the real partners behind this year's success, pointedly raised his glass past Alexander's table. Laughter rippled through the room. Eleanor didn't correct it. She let it sit there, let her husband absorb it in silence, and turned back to her conversation as though nothing had happened. Only one person in that room didn't laugh. Her name was Isla Ferguson, a junior associate who joined the firm less than a year earlier. She didn't know who Alexander was, only that he looked like a man bracing for a blow that kept landing anyway. She crossed the room, refilled his glass without being asked, and said quietly, "They don't know what they're talking about." She didn't linger. She didn't make a scene. She simply gave him 5 minutes of being treated like a person, then returned to her seat. Alexander remembered it long after everyone else had forgotten the toast. The months that followed made the affair harder to ignore. Sebastian began appearing at client dinners meant for Eleanor's husband. Friends who once invited Alexander to lunch quietly stopped, more comfortable with the version of the story where he was simply a man who'd let himself become irrelevant. Even his own brother told him, not unkindly, that perhaps it was time he found something to do with his days. Each time the cruelty surfaced, Isla was somewhere in the margins of it, refusing to laugh at a joke made at his expense, offering him the last seat at a table when no one else moved, once walking him to a taxi in the rain without being asked. She wanted nothing from him. She didn't know there was anything to want. She simply couldn't stand watching someone treated as though he didn't matter. Meanwhile, Eleanor had found her obsession. A partnership with Ashcombe Holdings, the most powerful and secretive property group in Europe, run, as far as anyone in London knew, by a founder no one had ever met in person. Landing Ashcombe would triple Harrington & Vale's valuation overnight. Eleanor talked about nothing else. At dinner, in the car, in bed, entire monologues about the deal that would define her legacy. Alexander listened to all of it. He said nothing. He was, after all, the founder no one had ever met. One evening, when he gently offered an opinion on the pitch documents spread across the kitchen table, Eleanor didn't even glance up. "You wouldn't understand this world," she said. "You've never worked a day in your life." The irony sat in his chest like a stone. He let it pass. The confrontation came at a dinner with clients, friends, and Sebastian seated where a husband should sit. Alexander, tired of being erased, finally said it plainly, calmly, without raising his voice. "I'm the owner of this company." The table went quiet, then erupted into laughter. Someone said, "Stop dreaming, Alexander." Sebastian smirked into his wine glass. Eleanor's face flushed with embarrassment, not for her husband, but because of him. She stood, took his arm firmly, and steered him toward the door. "Please make your way out," she said, low enough for only him and a few nearby guests to hear. "The boss will be here shortly. Please don't humiliate yourself anymore." Alexander didn't argue. He didn't flinch. He simply looked at her, really looked, the way you look at someone for the last time before a decision is made, and walked out. Across the room, Isla had gone still. She didn't laugh with the others. She didn't fully understand what she just watched, only that something about it didn't sit right, that the man being humiliated hadn't reacted like someone lying. She watched him go and said nothing, because she had no place to say anything yet. 3 weeks later, Ashcombe Holdings hosted the formal signing event for its partnership with Harrington and Vale, a glittering room in a converted Mayfair townhouse, cameras waiting, champagne already poured. Eleanor arrived glowing, certain this was the night that would define her career. Sebastian was on her arm, dressed like a man already planning the future he assumed was coming. Alexander arrived too, quietly in a plain gray suit, exactly the way he'd learned to make himself invisible. Eleanor spotted him near the entrance and crossed the room fast, her face tight with humiliation before he'd even said a word. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. Sebastian folded his arms, already smiling at the scene about to unfold. "Please leave," Eleanor said, the same practiced cruelty from weeks before. "The boss will arrive in a few minutes, and I don't want him to see you here." Alexander almost smiled, almost. The lights dimmed. A voice on the microphone announced the founder of Ashcombe Holdings, thanking him for finally agreeing to appear in public for this partnership. Every head turned toward the small stage at the front of the room, and then toward the man walking calmly out of the crowd and up the steps. "Alexander." The room didn't laugh this time. It went utterly silent. Eleanor's champagne glass tilted in her hand, forgotten. Sebastian's smile collapsed in real time. Every humiliation, every useless husband, every dismissive glance, all of it rearranged itself in a single moment into something unrecognizable. Alexander took the microphone. He didn't need to raise his voice. "Some of you have called me a lot of things this year," he said. "None of them were true. But I've funded this company since it was 2 people and an overdraft. I own the group you were about to partner with. And as of tonight, that partnership and this marriage are both over." What followed was swift. Ashcombe Holdings withdrew its funding and its name from Harrington and Vale within the week. Without it, the firm's remaining credibility evaporated. Eleanor lost the deal, the company, and eventually the townhouse with her name still on the lease. Sebastian's ambitions had nowhere left to climb. The friends and family who had sided so easily against Alexander found themselves suddenly, awkwardly apologetic, the kind of shame that shows up only once consequences do. Alexander's divorce filing was public within days, and he didn't hide from a single headline it produced. Isla found him afterward, in the quiet after the room had emptied, cameras gone, chairs still askew. She hadn't come to congratulate the owner of a company. She'd come to check on the man she'd watched get humiliated for a year, because that instinct hadn't changed even now that she understood who he really was. "I didn't know," she said simply. "I know," Alexander said. "That's exactly why it mattered." She didn't ask for anything, not a promotion, not a favor, not credit for the small kindnesses no one had noticed her give. She never had, and that, in the end, was what made her different from every other person in that room. Months later, when Alexander finally introduced her, not as an employee, not as a curiosity, but as the woman he loved, no one who'd known them both was surprised. She treated him exactly the same, wealthy or not, seen or invisible, powerful or dismissed. She always had. Some people only kneel once they know your worth. Others were kind before they had any reason to be, and that, in the end, is the only currency that was ever real.